How do it's Buzzboo! Welcome to Chatapoo. I think it's episode 3, but I'm not sure. Today we are looking at 6mm miniature wargaming in Feudal Japan with a Kickstarter that's live at the moment by Mr Robert Fallows, and basically we're going to be talking with the esteemed, the legendary, the epically bicep, Mr Gus Pollard. The equally esteemed, but not quite so bicep, Mr Ringo Simpkins.
How do?
So obviously, our guest for today, Mr Robert Fallows.
Akichiwa.
How are you, sir?
Hi.
So I'm going to start off proceedings today with a few little questions, starting with Mr Gus.
Yeah, I just wanted to, obviously, you know, everybody's been introduced, we all know each other, and one of the things that struck me about this T6 Kickstarter was just how much effort Rob has actually put into it in terms of doing all the research and stuff. So just wanted to ask a couple of real sort of basic questions, and just sort of ask, how did everybody find out about the 6mm stuff, or this game system? How do you guys all find out about it?
Myself? Well, I got an email from Robert about it when he put it out on Kickstarter, so I went across and had a look, because Robert's one of my subscribers, and I looked at it and I read the Kickstarter and I thought, this looks absolutely brilliant. I'd never considered anything further east than Italy.
Yeah.
You know, prior, and I looked at it. I looked at the figures, and I looked at all of the descriptions and stuff that Robert had put on there, and I thought, this looks really good.
Yeah.
And as he points out, there is nothing really out there for medieval feudal warfare at 6mm. And I thought it's well worth backing and well worth getting involved and expanding the 6mm rule sets, because there aren't that many. I mean, we've got Palomos, we've got DBA, and that's about it really. Mainstream stuff. I mean, there are other little generic ones here and there, and you can modify stuff like I do with the black powder.
Yeah.
Black powder.
For 6mm, but no, it looked really good, and the mechanics, as I've been watching the project develop with Robert's videos and stuff, mechanics look really straightforward and quite friendly. So that's how I got into it. So I went and banged in my money.
How about yourself, Pez?
I saw it when Ringo, he messaged me and said, have a look at this, and I went over to the Kickstarter page, and I've also clicked on the YouTube videos that Ringo's just mentioned, and it's quite extensive, the videos that Robert's put on there, which I thought was quite good for a Kickstarter, because sometimes as the Kickstarter's live, people are asking questions, you know, what's the gameplay like? Usually you'll see a lot of miniatures and you'll see a lot of fluff, but the actual gameplay is sometimes lacking. But at least, you know, this is a miniature rule set where you can get a taste of it from looking at the video. And on the first place, I thought that was quite a nice touch, and obviously, like you say, he's put a lot of effort into it, which is very commendable, and it's a worthwhile cause. So I like the fact that it was 6mm as well, because my mate Smudger, he's done back in the day, he's done a lot of backer 6mm painting. It's something that I can't really get my head around. I have tried, but I seem to try and paint things 28mm scale down on a 6mm. It doesn't work. So
We've got a good video about that.
well, there you go. See, check out Ringo's channel. But what he did, my mate, he sort of said, you know, it's about putting blocks of colour on. It's not what you paint on, it's what you leave out is the thing. When you look at it from a distance, some of the stuff he sold it on eBay for a lot of money, because it was amazing what he did. But for me, I just like the fact that this feudal Japanese thing, it looks different, doesn't it? I like, you know, the look of it, the flags and the formations and everything, and it's quite interesting.
I mean, I got sent the link by Ringo, I think, and I had the exact same sort of sentiment as you, Ringo. I sort of thought that I'd never really considered anything, you know, East or anything like that, and I'm not a fan of anime. I'm not really knowledgeable in Japanese history and stuff. But as soon as I checked out the Kickstarter, I was hooked straight away. I was like, this is amazing, because straight away you can tell the amount of effort and research that's gone into making the game. And it's a term that I've never used, and I've tried not to use, but I'm going to use it here, and that is, the game system seems simple but elegant, and that's not a term I've ever used before, you know, because I've not really found a game system that's like that, simple but elegant. So I was going to ask you, so what time period, Robert, is it actually set in?
The time period is it's what's referred to as the Sengoku Jidai, and that covers about 150 years of feudal Japan.
And feudal as in what? Warring families, warring clans?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit Japanese, as you would expect. Basically, as you know, a lot of 40k players are gonna recognise this, and it's obviously influenced it quite heavily. But if you think of the Empire in 40k, with the Emperor, he is one divine being. He's almost a godlike entity, and I think that played a lot of influence in the design of 40k. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but it's that kind of thing. And below him, there are all the warlords, and each one, yeah, you're right. They are like clans and stuff, and they are family, but they're not necessarily by blood. Sometimes they're adopted, sometimes they're married into families, sometimes they're brothers of cousins of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of obscurity to it all. But yeah, so basically in Japan there was probably about 12 or 15 clans at any one time that had, you know, plenty of power to be waging war. It's a civil war. It's a civil war.
So what sort of in the European centuries? What centuries are we looking at? 12,
The period is 1467 to 1603.
Right, so 15th century.
Yeah. And in that period especially, initially, because for one to attack another, he's going to get attacked by a third party. So there's a lot of jostling alliances, and these are formed on the battlefield as well as in peacetime. You know, armies all turned up, and then they chose which side they were going to be on. Yeah, it is really crazy. So it's not just about, it's not like there's a good side and a bad side. It's like there's 12 sides all fighting to become the shogunate.
Yeah. So they're all jostling for position, and like you said, so there's lots of sort of politics going on in the background. These warring, sort of feuding families. I wanted to ask you, mate, what so I mean during that time period, that's what is that for us? Late medieval, early Renaissance?
Early Renaissance.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of weapons and equipment were the Japanese using at this time compared to the Europeans?
It's very different. In Japan, they pioneered the use of paper, and in sort of like Europe, they pioneered paper and china or pottery, if you like. In Europe, pioneering techniques were more developed into lenses and glass. So in Japanese buildings, you won't see many windows because they just didn't have the technology for it. Whereas, and so also just on a tangent, sorry about this, tradesmen in Japan had a much shorter life because their eyesight would fail, and there was and there's all the cultural changes like that. But basically, Japan shut its borders at one point for 200 years and lived in complete isolation, and that was around this time. And they didn't allow traders to come in, so there's no outside influence. So the technology level in feudal Japan is very, it's not stagnated, but there's a very heavy Japanese principle that they take one type of technology and they perfect it, like say paper, you know, origami and stuff like that, or the katana, you know, they take one type of sword and they ultimately perfect it to its zenith, and then they just stick with it. They don't change. There's no evolution. And so basically what you're looking at is wood and metal plates laced together as armor. You won't see, unless it's a foreign, if it came from outside of Japan, you won't see like the big heavy steel cuirass or breastplates or anything like that.
So it's all the typical, how we imagine it, like the samurai type armor from what we see in all the films and that.
Yes, but they also occasionally some things like that would turn up, and in this era they are starting to open up their borders. And a lot of European breastplates were prized amongst the nobles for their novelty, and they did take it on. Just as a matter of fact, the gun, the Portuguese arquebus, a clan in Japan bought 2 guns, and then they copied them. In Europe at the time, you've probably heard about this through Napoleonics. If they had a matchlock, the lock would only fit so many guns. It wouldn't fit any gun. They didn't have that level of standardization. Whereas in Japan, they actually mastered that, and that's a trait of the Japanese. Is like they'll get one technology and they'll take it to its zenith. So you could get one component off a teppo, which is the Japanese version of an arquebus, and you could put it on any other teppo.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, the Europeans were jumping. I mean, their technology literally was changing from decade to decade, wasn't it? In terms of swords and armor, they were just jumping from one tech to the other. So the Japanese took one piece of technology and perfected it instead of just continually jumping to newer stuff. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
Cool. That's quite cool.
So why 6mm then? Why did you choose the scale 6mm over the other scales?
I chose 6mm because 6mm is new to me, and I really like all the benefits of 6mm. It's cheap to buy. It's easy to store. You do have to make new terrain for it. If you've got 28mm terrain, you will have to make terrain for it. But once you've made a couple of hills and some rivers and some woods and stuff, a 6x4 board's enormous. You know, you can have such a big battle on a 6x4 board, whereas in other scales that's just skirmish.
Because I normally buy my 6mm stuff. I don't know where you guys buy your 6mm stuff from. Do you guys go to Bacchus?
Yeah.
I've looked at Bacchus before when Smudge was trying to get me into it, and it does seem like you can get massive armies for quite cheap.
Well, there's other sources. Obviously, there's regular miniatures. There's Adler miniatures. There's quite a few different 6mm suppliers, but I've recently ordered all of the Japanese range. Had a full range of all of the troop types that Robert was talking about. So I plumped it, and I think I've got about 2 armies worth of troops for 46 quid.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? I did the same thing. As soon as I backed Rob on Kickstarter, I was like, Bacchus, Samurai Army, go! Like straight away. And yeah, I did the same thing. I bought like the whole range, and I mean, what other scale can you buy the whole range of miniatures and you only pay what 40 quid? You know what I mean? For 2 full armies of, I don't even know how many figures you get. It's like hundreds of figures, literally, isn't it?
It's 96 a pack, isn't it?
That's awesome.
Or 45 for cavalry.
Yeah. Okay. Damn squib on the on the volumes there. 96 pack sounded much better. No, but obviously, you get less cavalry in a pack. But you know, 90. What was it? It's about £4, between £4 and £6 a packet, and you're getting 96 figures, of which I think that would be at least 4 base worths.
It's 3.7.
Pardon?
It's 3.7.
Oh, you've done your maths. 3.7.
Yeah, well, I had to work it out. I was the pioneer. I just had to buy all this stuff and then go, I don't know how many units am I going to get. So
what you should have done is you should have made it 4. You should have shaved a couple of bases at 4.
Yeah. And then made
Unless, of course, you bought shares in Bacchus.
No, I wish I had.
And that's the thing, though. What other scale can you do that? That's what I love about 6mm. It's, you know, people going about, it's difficult to paint. I think out of all scales, 6mm is so easy to paint. Like, because all you're doing is block colors and give it a wash, and it looks amazing. You know what I mean? Once you got your full army painted, which will take you literally a weekend to paint your full army, and then it's in front of you in this huge army with all the miniatures. It just looks amazing. It looks like a proper army, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It just looks absolutely amazing, especially with the Japanese stuff. Because they all got those, you know, a lot of them have those flags that stick up at the back. You know, and obviously the long spears and stuff, so it just looks awesome. They're all ranked up, you're really ordered, and I love it. I can't get enough of it. You guys give me the feel for 6mm, I'm like, yeah, go, Bacchus, bye. Stop painting all again. Get really into it.
So are there any sort of influences that you've drawn from through? Are there any other rule systems? Are there any other scales that are quite popular?
That have influenced my rules.
Yeah.
It's rather the opposite. It's rather, do you know when you play a game and you're like, why is that like that? I don't understand why.
Every game.
Yeah, every game's got a few things, hasn't it? It's got a few bugs that you don't understand, and it's like, what? Who? Why is that like that? And I rather actually took the negative and decided, right, how can we not have that? How can we not have those bits? And that's what I've tried to explain in some of the videos, is that I'm not telling you how it is. I'm not going to go, right, this is how it is, because, and that's it. I'm going to empower the players with the theory of the game and the game mechanics, so that if you do come up against a problem and you're like, well, what do we do now? You can work it out for yourselves. I mean, rather than keep it all locked behind doors and say, no, I'm not going to tell you the secrets. I'm just going to show you, and that way you can get out of any problem for yourself. You can reason it for yourself.
You explained that in the video about movement when you were talking about flanking manoeuvres and this, that, and the other, and you were saying that the rules explain the historical reasons and the way in which troops moved on the field. So as if you find yourself in a situation that isn't actually covered in the rules, by applying the science of medieval warfare in Japan as described in the rules, you should be able to work it out. Which, to me seems quite a good move. Explaining because what you tend to find, I think, is that a lot of rule sets, and I'm not knocking rule sets here, but they draw on historical accuracy of troops and troop types, the unit compositions, the firing rates, the attrition rates, and this, that, and the other. And then they have separate volumes, or volumes that they've used as references for the tactical application of these units on the battlefield. So having all of that information in the rules as well, is really helpful, because it means that you've got one volume that you've got everything in that you'll need to play the game, including the times when the rules may not actually state what you have to do. You've got to use your own initiative.
And you'll have the background and the history.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. That's such a nice touch as well, because I love it when people, it's my favorite sort of element of games when people actually create a rule set that really does reflect the time period. It really captures what's actually going on. So the rule set's appropriate for the time period, and I really think you've done a good job with that. And watching all your videos and stuff, so far I'm loving it. I think it's great so far. And you even mentioned that in your faction. Because Rob sent over some of the faction .pdf stuff to me, and in there it even says, create your own faction, just discuss it with the other player, because there were so many different little sub-factions and warring little clans and feuds and things going on. I thought, lovely touch.
But it adds to the campaign probabilities of the game system as well. You can quite easily develop, linked games based on outcomes of the battles, and like you say, when you turn up for battle. Previous alliances may sway. Talking about from a campaign perspective, it all sounds really interesting and top to me.
It's got a
campaign player.
So you mentioned that there's all those. How many factions? It was 14 main families in Japan at the time.
In the period at any one time, there seems to be, it kind of fluctuates, but yeah, there's something like 14. So
again, going back to the rules, you've created faction-specific rules, so you could pick a faction, and again, it's a 6mm scale game, and that faction has rules and army composition specific to that faction, right?
It is a civil war, so essentially all the troop types are essentially the same, but what you have is the will, the idiosyncrasies of the personality of the clan leader, and they filter down, and they might make the army composition slightly different. They might make some troops a little bit different or more resistant, or they're just there's different flavors. It's all kind of the same. It's all ice cream, but there's different flavors.
No, that's interesting. I thought that was really, really a nice touch as well. And then, can you speak a bit about the artwork as well? Because when you showed that piece of art, I was like, the first thing I thought is I was like, everybody needs to see this. It looks great.
You should have heard him on Friday.
I've approached an artist after I searched for quite a while to find someone who I wanted something that was a little bit like the block prints of the period of Japan. And I wanted something that wasn't too cartoonish, but wasn't too block print, but wasn't too something that all encompassing of the time and the period. And I wanted someone that was knowledgeable as well. I just didn't want some generic sketches or something like that. And I've got an artist, and we are generally working through it right now. There will be there's going to be a lot more art in the book. There's going to be, for each troop type, there might be a little bit of art. There'll certainly be photographs of the units and stuff like that, so you know what you're building. And there's definitely going to be a 2 A4 page spread map of Japan for campaigns.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's a big campaign element in it. I was going to add it as a stretch goal for the Kickstarter, and I just thought, no, it needs this as well. It's not something extra. This is something that just needs to be in it.
Nice one.
Is there any sort of unit types that are sort of family specific, or does everybody have access to the same weaponry?
Everyone's got access to the same unit types, but they might be stronger or weaker depending on which clan you are. But there is one particular, it's not a clan, it's actually a religious movement called the Iko. And it's basically the samurai were the only people, because it's a Buddhist religion, they were the only people that could achieve the grace of Buddha. So basically it was a bit like being in Europe and then going, oh right, only the noble classes can go to heaven. So that's going to cause a lot of unhappiness amongst your serfs and your peasants and stuff. And obviously there were Buddhist monks and of different levels that picked up on that, and they started their own movement, and they actually managed in creating an army, and they took over a province in feudal Japan called Kaga, and they held that for about 100 years before they were all sort of like crunched up in one temple and burnt to death.
Nice.
You can see that from the troop tables I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
They're mainly built up by the fighting monks, as opposed to fighting monks and rabble.
That's right. Yeah.
Rabble.
I was in a bit of a discussion with someone today, and we were coming up with different unit types to them. So they will be the most different army there, but finding your figures for them is going to be a bit of a challenge. If you're into your modding, it's certainly the army for you.
Modding 6mm.
Modding 6mm.
I think Paul Alber's mad at modding 15mm, but
unless Peter Riley from Bacchus or Adler or someone wants to start making mounted warrior monks and other figures.
Yeah,
like
true.
That'd be really nice of them if they did that.
So I have to ask, why 2d6? Why did you go with a 2d6 system over d8s, d10s, d12s, 20, d4?
For a long time, I played a very lesser-known role-playing game called Rollmaster. It's very, very complicated. It's a good game, but it just takes so bloody long. And they had they didn't throw d20s or anything like that. They threw a d100.
Yeah, d percentile.
Yeah. So to actually do something.
For anybody that doesn't know, right, Rollmaster is probably the most complicated role-playing game that exists. Right, it's so complicated that each weapon has its own fucking page.
Has its own table for criticals.
This is the scimitar, and this is the table that takes up an A4 for the scimitar. This is for the spear. And it's like, where's my weapon? And you like roll on the table. It takes fucking ages. It's silly.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I played that for a number of years, and like in a role-play game, to do something, you have to hit a certain number. So you might need 50, right? So if you imagine a shoemaker and he makes a pair of shoes and he gets, for his first roll, he gets 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, because he makes 100 pairs of shoes in a day. So he gets every possibility along that range. right? Half his shoes are crap, and half his shoes are brilliant, and then he's got all this junk in the middle, you know, and that's what I wanted to get away from. A lot of games they throw a D6. Well, 1 to 6 isn't a big range, and once you put on some modifiers and the weapon proficiency or the skill of the unit, I mean, what does that take you to? 10 or something? You know, if you throw 2d6, your possibility of chance is already between 2 and 12. However, the chance of throwing a 1 on a d6, or a 6 on a d6, or a 1 on a d10, or a 10 on a d10 is the same. It's the same.
Yeah.
But if you throw 2d6, the chance of you throwing 7 is the highest, and 6 and 8 either side of that are therefore further still more common. So you're more likely to get an average number, but that doesn't mean that you can't get, you know, a total blunder. You know, you can't. You know, you could roll snake eyes. You could roll 2 1s, add that to your skill and whatever modifiers you got, and you're not going to do very well. But the other guy might only roll a 7. You know, so there's a bit more predictability in the outcome of the battles rather than just complete randomness.
So what Robert's going on about is something called it's pretty easy to explain. It's called normal distribution. It looks like that. All right. So when you roll any dice, that's so if you roll any dice, it's completely random. So a d6, or you've got just as much chance of getting a 6 or a 1. And even if you're rolling 10 d6, but you're counting each dice individually, it's still completely random. But if you roll 2 dice and add the results together, you get a normal distribution curve. So your average number is 7, right? And then getting a 2 and a 12 is either side of that. And what normal distribution does is it gives you a slightly more predictable sort of average range, if that makes sense. And they actually use this to plot like military statistics and things like that. So that's what Robert's on about.
Cool.
Yeah, and you nailed it spot on with that chart there. It's a bell curve rather than a flat line of chance.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. I really like you've done that. And then, so I mean, you've got the whole world to choose from in terms of history. Why Japan? Why did you go for the setting?
I went for it because a lot of the more popular things like Napoleonics or what's that other one they always play? I can't remember. But those markets are so oversubscribed on rules. Even in 6mm, you know, people have got their favourites, and for me to come in and go, oh, you know, I know that game's your favourite and you really like it, but do you want to try my rules? And it's like, no, not really. I'm quite happy with what I've got. Okay, bye. You know, it's not gonna do anything, is it? So I chose it for one reason, and that's because like no one plays it. No one plays Feudal Japan, and you know why no one plays Feudal Japan? Because there's no rules.
You're right.
Good reasons, any.
There's no rules. The rules are for 15mm or they're for 20mm, and then you have to take figures out of a base, and you can't take figures out of a base on 6mm. You know, a base is a base, and the figures are firmly attached. But another reason I chose it was perfect grounds for play testing mechanics and making sure that they were true. And that is because the troop types are the same. So it's not like, okay, who's the best? Is it, you know, French old guard grenadiers, or is it, you know, Sharps rifles? You know, and they're totally different things. It's like comparing apples and oranges. But in the Sengoku period, everyone's got an apple, everyone's got an orange, you know, everyone's got a tomato, you know. And that doesn't make it boring.
Standardized things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you hit the nail on the head there. Because there's loads of systems, isn't there, for that sort of linear warfare period, isn't there? From line warfare for like Napoleonics and especially Napoleonics, mostly around there. And it's exactly like you said. If you make a rule set, you're adding one rule set to dozens that are out there, you know. So, but no, honestly, I love the setting. And I was going to ask you as well. Do you think that your game could apply to larger scales or only 6mm?
I think the difference between 6mm and 10mm is fairly indistinguishable, and that would be fairly straightforward. I think you could play it as 15mm, certainly. But what you would find is that your battlefield would get smaller, unless you are like, unless you have like a whole garden and you're willing to wargame in it, and you've got the size of the army. But it's just something that seems unattainable in 15mm compared to 6mm.
Are there many bits of terrain or scenery in this type of game?
There's as much or as little as you want. I think that if you wargame, you neglect terrain at your peril for your enjoyment, because it only ever makes games more interesting.
So what do you get? Is it sort of a lot of forest, or can you just mix and match to get a lot of little towns and villages, or what's it like? Castles, or I don't know.
Castles seem to be used slightly differently in this period rather than they are in Europe. But certainly the geography of Japan is a very mountainous one. It's built on 7 volcanoes, or on a circle of fire, as they call it, which is 7 volcanoes in almost a circle. So yeah, you would be better if you had some hills, forests, yeah, villages, yeah. There will be a random table, so you don't have to think too hard about it if you don't want. But obviously, if you just want to make your battlefield up how you want, then that's up to you.
Cool. Does the terrain have certain effects within the rules, or is it just there for visuals?
No, I mean obviously there's it's pretty standard, isn't it? If you fight uphill, you're at a penalty. If you're in woods, you probably get some kind of soft cover for missile, or against the effects of missile fire. So yeah, it's pretty standard. There's going to be modifiers for terrain and for crossing rivers and climbing.
I have to ask because we're in the age of Sigmar, you see, and things are just brushed over a little bit, which is great for that kind of game, but
Yeah, it's a little bit alarming, isn't it?
Well, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
I was going to say, yeah, treading on the age of Sigmar territory. That's still, people are still fiery about that, aren't they? But I was going to ask you, Rob, do you have that artwork that you showed me? Do you have that to hand?
Probably not.
Well, I need to. I'll post it up on my Facebook page, because that art, honestly, it's fan-freaking-tastic. It's awesome. I also wanted to ask you, so basic gameplay, right? You've done a couple of videos, and I really like that it sort of captures that rolling battle. You know what I mean? So as soon as the armies start maneuvering, they really are like the whole sort of line is moving and everything's swaying, and it's really interesting. Can you just go through sort of basic gameplay?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I don't know if command points are going to survive. They seem to be surviving. They seem to be working. Basically, for every six units that each player has. So let's just say it for one player, then it makes it a little bit more easy, straightforward. So if you've got 20 units, you divide that by 6, and that's how many d6 you throw. Any units above 6, so if you get like 4.3, you just discard the 0.3. You throw 4d6, you add those up, then you add a +1 for each general and a +2 for your clan leader. Your clan leader, by the way, is you. It's the embodiment of you. If you lose that base, you lose the game. Because you're dead. So it's risky.
It's in every single game mode. It's like, because I played Saga, where you can kill the warlord and you win outright. But is that the same for every single game?
Not if you don't want it to be. I mean, people are always, whatever you write in a book, people are always going to have their own house rules and their own club rules.
Oh yeah, I agree. But I'm just thinking, is that a sort of standard thing in the rules? And obviously you can tweak it yourself, but as the rules are written by you now, is that the standard thing?
That's planned to be a standard thing.
Yeah, cool. I like that. Sorry, continue. I butted in there. Sorry.
Yes, I was interested in the command points there, before you put it in.
Right. Yeah. So you get so many command points. So effectively, although you probably can, sometimes you might not be able to put all of your army into action. And by put all your army into action, I actually mean the next phase, which is giving commands. So I know that wargamers, we don't like tokens. We want to have as little on the field as possible, but sometimes it's just necessary, and I want to use the minimum amount of tokens as possible. But there are some movement tokens, and they're numbered for each side, and you can either move a lone unit or a group. And you give an order, then your opponent gives an order to a unit or a group, and you go all the way on. And you might want to start on the left side, he might want to start on the right side, you all might start in the middle, but you give orders alternatively, but nothing actually moves. Then you check to see that your orders actually went through properly, and it's only like if you roll a 1, they don't go through properly, and there's a table for it, and then they don't do what you want. Maybe they don't do anything, maybe they go forward, maybe they go backwards.
So sorry, that represents the general giving orders physically, and those orders being relayed to the troops.
And interpreted through the battlefield communication system, which would be flags, whistles, gongs, semaphore, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So once all the orders are laid down, and they have a points cost and stuff, then once they're all done and both commanders have ceased giving orders, then they're enacted in the order that they were laid down in. So that whatever you move first moves first, then the other guy. So you have to be able to have a really good foresight to see what your opponent's doing and where your troops are going to end up. It's not like you don't move your whole army and then he moves his whole army.
Yeah, yeah.
So instead of getting 2 lines just crushing together, you'll end up with this side might move around, and then you get that rolling effect that is typical of line battles.
No, I find that really interesting. And then, so speak about units. So a group is when the bases are touching, right? And then you just have the bases separate for separate units.
That's correct, yeah.
See, I really like that. So you really got to balance your army between, if you want to go for large units, yeah, go for it. But they're obviously very awkward to maneuver and very slow. So you've got to kind of divide your army down. Like have maybe one big unit, then have smaller units that can maneuver a bit better. You know what I mean? So you really got to think about that kind of stuff, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah. If you think of a scale, on this side you've got large units. I think the maximum is 6, and then if you think on this side you've got individual units. Well, if you go this side, you're losing maneuverability, but you're gaining initiative because you can bring more units into play. Whereas on this side, you're gaining mobility. You're losing bringing all that force in. But you perhaps might have a better initiative because of the order it goes in.
Yeah.
Are these blocks of troops and stuff? Are they, for example, say you've got a block of troops of different speeds, and you've got them all as one unit that you're moving forward into position to conserve your command points. Can you then split that unit apart? So your faster moving troops, you can then say, right, well, I'm going to split this unit. They're going to move, and then I'm just going to move the bases apart so as they become independent units. Or if at the commencement of the battle they're all clumped together as one big unit, do they have to stay like that all the way through the game?
Units can be broken or formed during the battle.
Yeah.
So you could have... Obviously, a unit moves at the slowest
speed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, you've got your skirmishers in with your line troops moving forward en masse for protection or for coherency into position, and then you can break off your skirmish troops or your fast mobile troops.
Yes.
And then keep your heavy troops sitting there ready to absorb any. Yeah.
Any advances of infantry. Yeah. Yep. You can do that. Skirmishers, they work slightly differently. Skirmishers can fall in. So, say you had a group of archers, you can use them in more of like a infantry of foot kind of formation, where where they march along with everyone else, or you can deploy them into a skirmish formation, where they operate differently. Obviously, they get the little skirmishing rules and stuff, don't they? Where they can move backwards and forwards a bit more freely and stuff. But when they're actually all together and they're firing as a unit, they can fire in volley, which has advantages at range.
Yeah, I saw that on the video. That was good. You can get 2 shots if you don't move, don't you? And 1 if you move.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
The other thing is that you mentioned was the fact that in Japan at this period in time, cavalry was a bit of a non-event. They didn't really have cavalry in the way that we would think.
Little horses, isn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Gus is more qualified to answer this question because his girlfriend, is it his girlfriend doing a PhD on horses?
My wife, she's doing a PhD on equine disease, so she knows all about horses. So I asked her about the Japanese horses, and yeah, they're basically like tiny, little, sturdy mountain horses, but they're like pony sized. They're not war horses. You can't charge into battle on a freaking mountain pony, can you?
They're not normal war horses.
Yeah.
But that introduces quite a different. The fact that you've got battles here where, in effect, you have no cavalry, is something new to us in all of the stuff that I do, because we rely quite heavily on cavalry.
Are there any war machines or anything like that, or is it primarily infantry? Like missile weapons and that kind of thing.
They did have some kind of siege devices, but because of the infrastructure of Japan and because of the geology of Japan, it's very mountainous, and they didn't have roads. The Romans didn't conquer them and build them a lot of good roads. So
the Gauls are being conquered by the Romans.
So everything was transported through the country by hand. They basically handballed everything. They didn't have carts. They didn't pull with their horses, their tiny pony horses. They didn't pull carts. They got a length of bamboo and some fabric on it and slung it between two men, and they carried it. They carried everything.
That sounds pretty cool.
So
yeah, but going back to the
transporting a cannon.
Sorry, speak about the cannon. It's interesting.
Yeah, if a trader comes in and you've bought a cannon off some nanban, which is a word for barbarian, you've bought a cannon off this guy. It doesn't come on a carriage. It's actually fitted to the ship. So what you're actually buying is a barrel. So you buy this barrel, and then you've got to drag it across Japan if you want to fight with it. So most of the cannons just ended up in castles as defensive weapons rather than as a weapon on the battlefield.
They probably jacked on the Japanese, didn't they? Yeah, we'll sell you a cannon, but it's got no wheels.
It comes with a free barrel.
Okay. Shut, guys, shut! I'm trying to make a sale. But no, But you mentioned again, going back to the faction-specific rules, because there was one faction in Japan that imported foreign horses, didn't they?
The Takeda clan.
So they actually had larger horses.
Yes, I don't know where they get them from. The history gets all very sketchy, but essentially the Takeda clan they imported larger horses, and instead of just breeding them, for some reason, obviously they wanted some of the qualities, the hardiness of their current horses. They bred them successfully and ended up with a new breed of horse. And they also, and I'm just assuming that obviously that comes with new tactics and implementation in war. And that's the Takeda clan.
So yeah, if you go for that faction, Ringo, you've got some cavalry there, mate.
Yeah, but I don't like being the dominant force on the battlefield.
That's lucky
It
then,
doesn't
isn't it?
suit my personality.
That's fortunate.
And then what about so we've talked about cannon. What about firearms? So do the Japanese, in your game, have you got guys with like arquebus rifles and things like that?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the Japanese they pioneered. I don't know why, but they obviously got these arquebus from the Portuguese, and they actually designed their own. They redesigned it. The Japanese teppo doesn't have a stock; it just has a handle. So it's like a rifle, but it's just got a pistol grip. And
it's a common theme of the Japanese: a cannon with no wheels, a rifle with no stock, horses that are rubbish.
Yeah. And that was ignited with a match as well. It's not even a flintlock or anything like that. And they used them in units, but they didn't use them in units exclusively. Well, one clan did. I'll talk about that in a minute. But they used them, so you'd have the front rank would have the teppo, the arquebus, and then in between each of those men was an archer stepped back so he could fire between them, and that was to keep up the rate of fire, so that whilst they were reloading and stuff like that, they would there'd be a lot of arrows coming out of the middle of them.
That's really interesting. So like an integrated formation of bowmen and riflemen, essentially.
Yeah. Later, there was the fourth Battle of Nagashino, which was between the Takeda clan, which was their superior cavalry. They were, quite a force on the battlefield. People were scared of their cavalry, and the Oda clan, his leader, he devised a strategy where every firer for the firearms.
And you can play this plan. You can play it, right?
Yep, you can. He would have two loaders behind him, and they would form tight ranks. And this is getting more towards like the European Napoleonic style. So there'd be 3 men deep, and then the guy at the front would just keep firing, and he'd keep passing the weapon back, and then a loaded one would get passed to him. And using that and palisades, they were able to defeat the Takeda clan and cause quite a lot of devastation in the process.
See, I love this. It's awesome. It's like all these different factions are really interesting. The history that's really interesting, because again, I've never been into Japanese history, but this is the first time that I've taken interest in it, and it's freaking awesome because you know your stuff.
Yeah,
and you've got a rule set that's amazing. What you need to back this, people. Damn it! It's awesome.
Shall we take a look at the Kickstarter now? Do you want me to screen share?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it.
And then Robert can talk us through it. Let me see if I've prepared anything. There we go. Yeah, that was spooky, wasn't it? There you go. Okay, so you're looking at £1,200 as your goal, and there's 13 days to go. And there's some nice little pictures that I've seen. It looks really cool, actually. The more I look at it, it looks really cool.
If you could just click on updates there, because that's like, I don't know why Kickstarter do this, but they kind of like hide all your updates, and you've got so much good stuff in your updates. And then it's all hidden there, and if you don't click that, you'll never see it.
That's
got all your videos, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty cool. So let's just have a quick flick through, and you can talk us through the campaign itself. Just wait for it to catch up, obviously, because I'm streaming. So can you just talk us through the reason why you're doing the Kickstarter?
I chose to do the Kickstarter because I don't believe that someone can write a set of wargame rules and get it right first time. You need playtesters, and the more playtesters you have, the better. And this was one way of reaching those playtesters, but also it's a way of getting it out there and getting people excited about it. I mean, it's going to take you a little while to paint your army up and base it and all the rest of it. So, while you're doing that, you can either be one of the beta testers or you can just be quietly waiting for it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
See, that has got to be the best fucking reason I've ever heard for running a Kickstarter for Wargaming.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? Because I want people to play test the game. That's fucking amazing. That's awesome. That's the best reason I've ever heard for a Kickstarter. So, bloody points to you, mate.
A lot of the questions that we've been asking are already answered on here. Look at this one. And I used the rule set for 10mm.
Oh yeah.
Well, some of us, you see, have already read the Kickstarter. You see, Pez.
I know, but the thing is, I ask the questions because basically, as if somebody who's watching this and haven't been on the Kickstarter.
Well, they better already go there and back it.
Let's look at some of the pledge levels. £1 or more.
Right. The thing is, right, you just don't know what you're going to be interested in next month, next year, and if these rules don't exist, if they don't get backed, they won't be there, so you won't be able to play them. And I think Ringo's going to chip in here, but even if you don't want a wargame Feudal Japan, you can still support the 6mm community.
Yeah, I mean, the 6mm community, I think, is 6mm is a really, 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 really good scale, and Gus will back me up on this because we've already been through the benefits of it. It gives you massive armies at low cost, and you can play. You can do stuff in 6mm that in 28mm you just could never do because you just don't have the space, nor the time, nor the money to go buying the amount of troops and stuff to recreate some of these massive battles. And the fact is that there aren't that many specific 6mm rules, and I'll count 10mm in with that as well because from base mechanics they're pretty similar. So any new rule set to the 6mm market has got to be a good thing, and there's something that is not particularly well covered in. I mean, I assume there must be people that play Feudal Japan in the DBA arena, but I don't think there are any specific rules that I can think of at 6mm for this period and with these troop types. Because we already mentioned, I mean, a lot of rules will be, you'll use various sets of rules. I mean, I personally would think that you're looking at a set of rules that would be roughly from the weapons and troop types be what 100 Years War, early 100 Years War period.
Yeah.
But you'd have to take out all the cavalry. Do you see what I mean?
And your cavalry is going to be far stronger than the Japanese.
That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't be able to use the cavalry in the same way because that would then overcompensate or cause an effect on the game that isn't historically accurate. So you're going to end up not representing the period very well. So a specific set of rules that take into account the lack of gunpowder artillery, the lack of heavy cavalry and light cavalry to that degree, and the troop setups of, like we were talking about, the volley fire of ballistic and line of sight fire. So obviously, if you've got a row of archers and a mixed unit of archers and arquebus wielding gunmen, their lines of sight and their trajectories are completely different. You see what I mean? You have to be able to see somebody to shoot them with a missile weapon of that type. Yet with a bow, you can fire over a tree, and the rules will take all that into consideration because that's the historical context that the rules have been written. So it's well worth backing because I didn't know 10 years ago that I'd be playing Napoleonics now.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that people wrote the rules that they did.
Yeah.
Then, because they're now available to me in a library of rules that I can turn to and play the game. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people forget, is that we only ever think about now and where we are now, and we don't think about what we'll be doing in 12 months' time or 2 years' time or 5 years' time within the hobby. And things change, and our attitudes change, and the world changes from our hobby point of view. I mean, 10 years ago I was playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle all the time. Now I'm looking at Black Powder, the Japanese wargaming system. I'm playing 6mm more and more. I play solo rules, so we haven't actually covered solo rules yet. But if it gets funded, then we will be developing solo rules, won't we, Robert?
That's great.
We will, and Ringo's going to have a big input on that, so it's going to be good.
That's fantastic. That's really awesome. Wow.
So it's well worth backing, and you'll see that that Robert's changed some of the backing levels to £1. I don't know who Ringo Simpkins is, but
Simpkins.
So it must be a relative of mine, but I don't know who he is. It's Simpkins. Stinkins. What we've done, because am I allowed to say this on here? You think Kickstarter will ever find out?
Go for it.
What we're doing?
Wins, Rodney.
If people back us at £1, so say you put £1 in, and you back the my Barmy Army or Gus's, then we're going to have a little draw on our channels if the project gets funded, and everybody that backed £1 against one of those options will go into the draw and they'll get a rule book.
That's great. Yeah.
You're gonna get. You stand a chance for a quid. Let's face it, a quid isn't much money, is it? You're gonna get. You stand a chance of getting a 20-odd quid rule book, and you would. I think if you went to a Christmas fair anywhere, or you went to walking down the high street somewhere, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Here's a quid for some raffle tickets," you'll give them a quid, won't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, Pezza wouldn't, but. You can't even buy a McDonald's cheeseburger for a quid.
That's right. You can't even buy bacon rashers for a quid.
No. So I bought a Topic the other day, and it cost me 70p.
That's insane. What world do we live in?
I know, it's terrible. So for 30p more, you stand a chance of getting a decent rule set that you might not use now. Yeah. But in a few years' time, you might come to it. You might, and 6mm, playing 6mm or 10mm will really, really open your wargaming horizons.
And it doesn't clog your arteries.
Hmm?
It doesn't clog your arteries.
It doesn't clog your arteries, no, and it expands your mind.
There you go. Yeah. It does look good on the battlefield. I mean, I've seen a few tables at some of the shows, and they look really good.
They do. It looks awesome. It looks amazing. I love it. Whenever I go into my man cave here and I look at my display cabinet, the thing that looks the best and that I'm the most proud of is all my 6mm stuff because it looks amazing,
doesn't it? I mean, I'm looking at my black powder lineups now for and my medieval ones over there. They just look incredible.
They are awesome on there. And again, having a Japanese army is going to be great. I cannot wait to start playing these rules and to start painting my figures up. I'm so excited about this Kickstarter. I think it's amazing. So, but have there been any questions, Ringo, from any of the chat?
We don't seem to be picking up that many live viewers at the moment, I'm afraid.
We've got a few comments. Somebody, Bazooka J Rambo, he asked about terrain, but we've already covered that.
We covered that.
Yeah, and he also said earlier on that Tiny Samurai sounds cool to him, and he's spot on there. Tiny Samurai is what's more cool than Tiny Samurai?
Yeah.
Come on.
Tiny Ronin.
If anything could come running through my door now in the man cave and amaze me and make me laugh, would be a Tiny Samurai. And I'd say to him, "Get on that table, let's have a game." That's what I'd say. So that's my endorsement for the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think it's well worth backing, and I do think it's well worth. I really will be disappointed if we don't reach the funding on it, because I think it's brilliant.
Well, no, you know what? You hit the nail on the head there, Ringo. I mean, it's all about community. It's all about expanding your horizons, and it's again. I have the same thing. I didn't know anything about Japanese history, and now because the rule set's so good, and Rob's done such a good job, I'm so into the setting, and I'm so excited about everything to do with it now. I think it's amazing, So it really does. You're right there, Ringo. It broadens your horizons, and again, you never know what you're going to be into. Like you said, in a month or 2 months' time, it really is an awesome setting, an awesome rule set, a great scale of miniatures, and you can get great miniatures for the game. So, back it, people. You got to back this. Is awesome.
And with the rule set, 2 armies, all for the price of a Games Workshop starter set.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And you'll never need anything else again.
No.
That's a good point, actually.
You might need some dice and a ruler.
So basically, let's just take a little trip. I'm in a local not a local. I'm at a wargaming show, and I'm thinking to myself. Normally, I'm thinking, I might pick up 1 or 2 units if I'm lucky. Basically, I could just say, you know what, I'm going to have 2 more armies, couldn't I? 2 more.
If you went to the backers stand, you could probably buy the exact figures rather than packs.
Mm.
They do sell strips, so you'd be able to just say buy 22 archers, which is a base. That's right, isn't it? 22, wasn't it?
I like the idea, to be honest. I do like the idea.
For archers, missile units are a bit smaller. They're about. I like to put a flag on it and a samurai and a retainer, but essentially the missile troops themselves is only like 9.
So that's 2.1 strips.
There you go.
The thing, right, is that when I went to Salute this year, the thing I was most excited to see out of all the games there were an independent developed rule set, that was, I think it was Napoleonics, using hair curlers for miniatures. And they went over to the backer stand, and I literally bought a whole army, an army pack. I think it was like 36 quid. And in there's, I don't know how many hundreds of figures, and it's freaking amazing. You're not going to get that kind of quality for that kind of price and bang for your buck at any other scale, and it looks awesome. Like I said, it's the thing I'm the most proud of, and the thing that I like to see the most in my display cabinet is my 6mm stuff, out of all of it.
Well, I definitely need to get Smudger to paint some 6mm for me, I think. Definitely.
Well, when I come down to your house in a week or so's time for our business meeting, I'll bring you some spare 6mm Japanese with me.
Yeah, bring them down, man. Yeah, I'll have a look at that. That's cool.
So I might even paint some up before I come.
That would be even better. I like painting stuff. I do now anyway. Now I'm time strapped.
Now that you're an international businessman.
Well, not quite, but we're getting there.
Well, you go to Stoke, don't you? That's international for.
It's like Moss Isley Spaceport.
Well, I have to go in a minute anyway to go and get my.
I think we'll wrap it up. Yeah, I think. Is there any more questions or anything else you want to say, Robert?
No, I think we've done everything. I don't think anyone could take any more information in right now. But I do actually want to say thanks to you guys for bringing me on here and giving me this platform. It's very nice.
You're welcome. I think.
Thanks to you, man. You're the one doing a great job. So
it's been really good. I've especially enjoyed the small portion of the Japanese history that we've got. I mean, I'm definitely going to look forward to checking it out. Is that you, Ringo?
That's chocolate time.
Yeah, if it's chocolate time, that's it. It's been overwritten by Ringo's wife. We have to go, I'm afraid. But I do recommend that if you are interested, you check out. I'll put a link when this goes onto the YouTube. I'll put a link to Robert's Kickstarter in the description below the video if you want to check it out.
And watch out for some, hopefully this week, a figures video from me when my package from Bacchus arrives.
I shall put a link to that also.
Yeah, I'm going to get something put up and tie in the Kickstarter as well soon, probably early next week.
And I'll basically put a link to your guys' YouTube channels anyway in there, and people can check it out directly all from this one video. So I'd like to thank my esteemed guests for today's show, Mr Gus Pollard, Colour of the Gods, Mr Ringo Simpkins.
Hello, bye-bye, whatever.
And Robert Fallows, thanks very much, mate.
Thank you, it was an honour.
All the best for your Kickstarter.
Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, you guys have a good one, okay?